Speakcies.
Welcome to Origin of Species. This is Steve. I'm here with my good friend Scott. Today we're going to look at terms and idioms associated with the word blue. But before we get going, please like and subscribe to Origin of Species at YouTube. Leave us a positive review and a 5-star rating at Apple Podcasts. And if you really like the show, and frankly, even if you don't like the show, we'll still take your money. Support us at Patreon by becoming a Speakcies Supporter at patreon.com/Speakcies. And if you want to look good, almost as good as Scott and I, it's kind of tough to set a high bar like that. Go to speaksies.com/store for the latest Speaksies merchandise powered by TeePublic. So, like I said, Scott, we're going to do words based around the word blue, different terms and idioms, and it's a very versatile word. It's something, it means various things and often can mean contradictory things depending on the context in which it's used. And in the same way that the word blue can be used in many ways, we're going to see many people and many things today. We're going to see people like Geoffrey Chaucer, author Washington Irving, and legendary British actor David Garrick.
We've talked about him before, I think.
We have. Cool. He's back. We're going to have sex and drunkenness. We're going to have a spiteful Episcopalian minister. And finally, a combination of people I never thought would be together. Sir Walter Scott, who, to be clear, is not Sir Walter Raleigh, and also the comedy duo of Leroy and Skillet.
Leroy and Skillet.
Leroy and
Why
Skillet.
Why does that ring a bell?
Back. Wow. Well, you'll learn.
I know exactly who they are. I won't spoil it, but I know who they are.
And it's worth hanging around.
Yes.
For that. So I have kind of had a list of terms I've wanted to look at for a while, and for a long time, depression-related terms, not like Great Depression terms, more of just general depression. And this time of year, winter for me is pretty tough. I don't think technically I'm depressed, but I'm definitely one of those people that when the days get short and the nights are long, sounds like the beginning of a country song.
It sounds like a Bryan Adams song.
It could be. Yeah. But, I'm not a big fan. I need some sunshine. And I would say, that I feel blue or I have the blues. So as I mentioned, the word blue means a lot of things. It can be applied a lot of different ways. But to start out, wanted to focus on the depressive aspect of it, feeling blue, having the blues.
And by the way, congrats on, I think, I was just scanning through, this is the first color themed episode we've done.
Oh.
We did I did one that was like black ball and black, but black's not a color, right? So
they were all lowercase b black when we did that. So I don't think that really counts for everything.
No.
So starting at oxfordreference.com, the definition of blue with the emphasis on depression. The blues are a feeling of melancholy, sadness, or depression. The term is recorded from the mid-18th century and comes elliptically from blue devils, meaning depression, or delirium tremens, or as you and I think know more commonly as the DTs. Blues is also used for the melancholic music of Black American folk origin, typically in a 12-bar sequence. It developed in the rural southern United States towards the end of the 19th century, finding a wider audience in the 1940s. So for the purposes of today, we're going to stay away from the blues, the musical genre, not for any reason that we don't like it. It's just something that's that's a whole episode in and of itself.
Right.
But I think that we see the connection here between blue in the term of melancholy, how it applies to the music that, as Steve Martin said in The Jerk, he didn't like those songs. He found them so depressing.
I guess that's why they called it the blues.
I like that, Mr. Elton John.
As Elton once
there. Yeah. So keeping with the focus on depression, going to Edom Online, talk about the origin of where this came from. So they note depression, low spirits from the year 1741. And also in the sense of being low-spirited from circa 1400. So to start with the older reference, 1400, we're going to go to good old Geoffrey Chaucer.
Yeah.
Chaucer is a good name to drop if you need to sound intelligent or, want to act like you're well-read, things that I pretend to be often. So let's go to one of his poems. from circa 1385. The compliment of Mars. Ye lovers that lie in any dreed, fleece, yes, wicked tongues y'all espy. Lo, yond the sun, the candle of jealousy, with tears blue and a wounded hurt, taketh your leave. So some of the words that I butchered in that, which as you could tell are written in that kind of crazy old English, definitely messed up heart. I said hurt. It's spelled Herte, but we're going to keep that in there.
Yeah.
But before that, with tears blue. So the idea that, your tears are something that indicates sadness.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. I would have never connected. And it's funny because tears aren't blue, but I guess the water in the ocean is blue, kind of, and so you can kind of connect that way, right? That's
yeah. And I think it's one of those things that just kind of universally, when you hear blue in a kind of a depressive context or a sad context of sadness, it seems just to fit. It seems to come out pretty naturally there.
Yeah, it's weird, and you don't know like what came first, the chicken or the egg, with a lot of these words, where it's like, do we connect? I mean, the word blue just seems sad, but is it because our whole life we've heard it that way?
Yeah.
Or is there something intrinsic to the word? Probably not, but maybe, because it does kind of have, and I feel like, well, you'll probably get into this, but before there were as many clinical names for things, it was just the blues, so-and-so has the blues or whatever, which, so yeah, it's always felt like a sad word for sure.
And that's actually a great lead-in for the other use of it, the depression or low spirits from 1741. So you said, now we use the word clinical. So in times before, a lot of maladies were blamed on things outside the realm of nature, supernatural things. So we get terms that people would think more there was some sort of spiritual oppression going on with depression. So the term blue devils is something you're going to hear a lot that'll come up often during this. And this is quoting from wordhistories.net. The expression also designates hallucinations experienced by an alcoholic, the blue devils. Something that would be like, we hear pink elephants, blue devils are with that, as some of the things. I had mentioned the DTs earlier. We see this expression used in writings from the Scottish poet and novelist Sir Walter Scott, who, as everyone knows, is not Sir Walter Raleigh. And here's a quote from him: "The dissipated and intemperate habits of those who, by a continued series of intoxication, become subject to what is popularly called the blue devils, instances of which mental disorder may be known to most who have lived for any period of their lives in a society where hard drinking was a common vice."
Wow, that's a new one. So I just have to, for the record, say, boo, Duke Blue Devils. Boo.
On principle, they should always be booed. And I set that up by talking about how it's sometimes used in maybe not a clinical way. And that sounds very clinical, what he said. Would you think?
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting about it is that is from a book from Sir Walter Scott entitled Letters on Demonology and Witchcraft.
I almost said, when you were saying about before things were that, they blamed it on other things, I was going to say a lot of things were just a demon, some sort of, spirit that you had. So the blue devil thing, though, the way you laid it out, I did think it was some sort of actual clinical diagnosis. That's the word I was looking for earlier. But an actual, like, they actually had a demon. Wow.
I would think too that I've been very fortunate in my life that I've not. Drunkenness is like true drunkenness, alcoholism. To the point that you would have the DTs. I can't imagine is a very good experience to go through.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling back then that was probably a lot more prevalent than it is now.
Well, yeah, and the whole thing, I'm sort of mocking the idea of having a demon, but it's like it really just depends on how you look at it, right? Like, I mean, in some ways, maybe you do have a demon. I like the use of the word demons when people are saying, using it euphemistically, like I've got these demons, or so-and-so has a lot of demons. Maybe they don't mean it literally, but it's a good way to express yourself. But it is interesting that he was being literal though, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
I
about
think,
you have this actual demon. Yeah.
and speaking of people who take the devil literally, I am wearing right now my Kale is from the Devil shirt. As we know, kale is the devil's weed. And if you're interested in having a shirt like this, go to speakcies.com/store to get our TeePublic merchandise, including your very own Kale's from the Devil shirt. You can get a sweatshirt. You can get a onesie for your child. Start raising your children right. You're not going to have to worry about blue devils when you tell them right away where kale comes from.
Yeah, and everybody's working from home. I'm pretty sure you can get a mouse pad. I mean,
yeah,
you probably need a new. Think about it. When's the last time you replaced your mouse pad? Probably not too recently.
That's a good point. Maybe about the time that Sir Walter Scott wrote this, which was 1830.
Yes.
So continuing with Blue Devils, again, the Blue Devils, you have the DTs, you're not feeling great. You're not, out there winning the day. So this is something that was mentioned frequently. So another time that it was used was from the actor David Garrick. So David Garrick is an English actor, playwright, and theater manager. I believe in one of our early episodes, we trace back the origin of The Show Must Go On to him.
Yeah, or it might have been, I think it was Break a Leg.
Yeah.
It was but it was, yes, but the show went on, like, because he broke his leg and kept going. I think if that's the same guy.
Yeah. And if
That's
not,
awesome.
we're going to pretend that he is, because we're going to do a quote from him. So he wrote a letter in 1741 that as he was very influential and popular, his writings helped influence getting this idea into the popular culture. So from a letter dated July 11th, 1741, David Garrick writes, "The town is exceedingly hot and sultry, and I am far from being quite well. Though not troubled with ye blues, as I have been, I design in taking a country jaunt or two for a few days when our engines are finished, for I found great benefits from ye last I took."
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell there though if he was saying he had the blues because it was so hot and sultry.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what he was kind of saying? And so now he's going to go run out in the meadow or whatever he
I
said he was going to
think
do?
that he's saying that he can deal with the town being hot and sultry
Okay.
because he's not hungover.
Because he doesn't have the blues.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes.
He's depressed. So I guess, having the DTs, I don't think there's ever really good weather for that. But imagine a place that's hot and sultry.
Can I ask you something that is going to
Yes.
be bad? I don't know that I've heard the term the DTs. You brought that up
Mhm.
earlier, and you said, what exactly is that?
The
That's what
DTs,
you were describing
Sure.
earlier?
Yeah, so let me get the medical term, is delirium tremens. And what it is if you're a full-fledged alcoholic and you go through a draw, you experience the DTs, which is shaking
Shakes.
and hallucinating. And, even though we're making lights, a lot of stuff, everything I've read, it's one of those things that stuck out to me as you're younger and you read, especially in the culture that we grew up in, one beer, the next thing you know, that you're hanging out with David Garrick and you're shaking things out.
Yeah.
That very much could happen to you. So but it worked. It stuck with me. And I so far have not ended up in a hot and sultry town with a British actor.
I kind of want to now, though. The way he described that was kind of awesome.
Well, everything he says, it sounds like a Rod Stewart song. Like, I'm pretty sure Exceedingly Hot and Sultry is like a mid-70s Rod Stewart album. And if not, it should be.
Yeah, I agree.
So keeping on with the idea of blues being a state of depression, one of my favorite resources, the Facts on File Encyclopedia of Word and Phrase Origins, references 18th century expression blue devils or low spirits, but it also, which I believe is the reference from David Garrick. But another way this term was popularized was from the author Washington Irving, who I believe is best known for the story of the Headless Horseman.
Okay, yeah.
Which has a better name than that. But I remember the Headless Horseman aspect of it, whatever the full name of that actual story is, has left my mind right now. So we're gonna.
I know. I'm like Ichabod Crane, the Headless Horseman. There's people that are listening right now that are screaming out the name of it. Yeah. Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow. But there's another name to scream out now. Selma Gundy.
Selma Gundy,
which was a publication a periodical that Washington Irving, his brother, and several others used.
Okay, it sounds like something you'd order at a restaurant that serves very exotic food. And
Mhm.
notice how I said very exotic and I didn't say any culture
Yeah, but
because I'm woke.
you are woke, but we'll have a culture here to offend in just a second.
Yes.
So, Selma Gundy was a series of satirical essays and poems published in 20 periodical pamphlets from the year 1807 to 1808 by Washington Irving, his brother William, and a guy by the name of J.K. Paulding. And what they did is they would use pseudonyms in this writing, kind of a little bit like people did with the Federalist Papers, but they weren't necessarily trying to hide who they were. In the case of the Federalist Papers, people were going to die. In this case, they were just being sarcastic. So they basically commented on modern life and times in the year 1807. Some of the characters were Lancelot Langstaff, the editor, and he often would publish letters from somebody, a visitor to our country, Mustafa Rubadub Kelly Khan.
Is the Rub-a-Dub in quotes like that's his nickname, or is that his actual name?
It's all hyphened together, which is very
Wow.
interesting. So I'm sure there's some sort of Mideastern culture that is offended by that. And if it's one that really gets offended, we'll know because this will be the last episode.
What's the word again? What's the word that we can yell out?
Selma Gundy.
Selma Gundy.
So
That's what I have to say to that.
There you go. So here's a quote from Selma Gundy. He concluded his harangue with a sigh, and I saw that he still was under the influence of a whole legion of the blues.
Wow. So really I'm so kind of shocked that this is all, so up to this point, this use of the blues is tied to drinking and alcoholism.
It is like all the depression, and it's I didn't really realize that till you just said it. Like all the depression that these guys have is related to alcoholism and the effects of alcoholism.
I mean, I think it's definitely something that people that struggle with alcoholism could also struggle with depression, and the two of them fit hand in glove, right? So it's like which is driving which, and you got to kind of think about treating both. So but I would have never. It's just really interesting that's really the root of this thing, all the way up to where we are now, to where you are in your story now,
right?
Not 2021.
And I think what's interesting too is it kind of shows it gives us insight into our very recent past. That life for Americans, especially, I don't know, we live in a very pampered modern culture that within the last 100 years. We have, I think, some of the things that we deal with now, kind of modern issues of depression, are because we're so affluent and we have time to ponder certain things. Whereas these guys were probably in so much pain from everything.
Oh my gosh,
that they were drinking all the time too. I think it's not a coincidence that, severe alcoholism seems to be so prevalent that the term the blues was coined from that.
Yeah, it definitely fits and makes sense. It's very, I hate to use the word satisfying because it's kind of depressing to think about appropriately, but it does make sense that would play out that way for sure.
Yeah. So the blues and used in a way to say I'm feeling the blues, I have the blues. It comes back all the way from Geoffrey Chaucer, but seems to correlate a lot with the use of alcohol in the Blue Devils, depression coming from just borrowing tomorrow's happiness for today. And when tomorrow hits, the feelings that you get, whether it's just some sort of hangover or actual, withdrawal from alcohol.
Yeah. No free lunches.
No free lunches. So before we go on to more blue terms, Scott, I believe that you have a new slang that you wanted to share with us.
I do have a new slang. And as I was preparing for the new slang, I really so just to foreshadow a little bit where we're going to go with this, I had to as part of my research for my new slang, look at TikTok and watch some TikTok videos and reels, Instagram reels, which I've already, unfortunately, I've polluted my algorithm in Instagram by looking at, you look at one reel and next thing you know, you're looking at lots of reels.
Yeah.
But I had this thought, which is that I used to think that acting was easy. Like, and Tom Cruise and these guys. I mean, Tom Cruise, he does stunts and stuff, but like for the most
Yeah.
part, I always thought, the right person, anybody can really act. It's just a matter of getting through like Harvey Weinstein or whatever, or whomever it might be. I appreciate actors more than ever now because watching these videos, I mean, this really is a thought I had.
Yeah.
They're so bad. Like it's these, you've seen them. They're either acting out some scenario. So whether it's some teenage kid or an adult, which is even worse, unless you are somebody that's been on our show.
Sam Ramsdale, who is wonderful
Yes.
and awesome.
She does not, I'm not talking about her. Like everything else, there are good versions, but she's great at what she does. But everybody thinks they can act now. And especially if you're like an attractive young person and you get out there and you're just doing that thing where you're just sort of like lip syncing some horrible song, or you're doing some weird role play to and it's so horrific. And you can tell they think they're really nailing it. And it's like, you're bad at this. You're bad at acting out this scene. I started to really appreciate actors. So that was something I was going to bring up. But then a couple nights ago, I do have an example though of where I don't appreciate actors. And this is somebody that I normally love. And that is Tom Hanks. So
America's dad.
I don't know if you ever want to give anybody that label after Cosby, but but let's not curse him with that. But yeah, I mean, Tom Hanks is a really lovable guy. But have you ever seen so I really enjoyed the book. I realized I had never seen the movie. I said, it's on HBO Max or something that I have. And that is the Da Vinci Code.
I have not seen that. That's when Tom Hanks has a mullet and is like fighting the Catholic Church.
Yeah. And I can't even put into words how baffling and unintentionally funny that movie is. It's horrible. And Tom Hanks is maybe the worst part, like in my opinion.
Wow.
And I love Tom Hanks. I've watched so many of his movies multiple times, but it's like he's doing this thing. If anybody's ever seen this movie, maybe you know what I'm talking about, where other people will be talking. He doesn't talk much in this movie. He just makes this face where it looks like he's smelling a fart and he's not sure if it's his, right? He's just sort of making this weird face. And then when he does talk, I think he's trying to do a Harrison Ford impression. Like he's trying to have his own Indiana Jones thing going on. It's really bad. So that's sort of my whole train of thought that I just wanted to throw out there. But but I go on YouTube because I'm thinking there's got to be a supercut of like how awful Tom Hanks and like how funny it is. It's confusing and funny. And I couldn't find one. So I thought, well, maybe it's just me. But I did think it was very telling that I did find something on YouTube that said like the best scene of the Da Vinci Code. And I was like, well, I'm curious because I didn't think any of it was good. And it just so happens that in that scene, I think Tom Hanks says like 3 words. He's like, it's all just action or whatever. So, but in general, I do appreciate actors much more now after having to look at all these TikTok videos. Yeah. And speaking of Tom Hanks having really bad hair, which he does, so do the subject of our new slang today. So let's get that going. New slang when you notice the stripes. So I was just having a moment and I was thinking about how I remember just like it was just yesterday, my dad bringing home the Commodore 64. We'd taken it down, unpacking it in the basement, setting it up, and we had our first computer. It feels like yesterday. We could, you could play games, you could do these things. And now all of a sudden we're living in a world where we have things called e-girls.
E-girls.
And e-boys.
E-boys.
Which, okay, I'll get this out of the way.
Hashtag diversity.
Yeah. Nobody gives a shit about e-boys. I'm sure there are e-boys, but it's e-girls is the thing. But like some of these articles, they felt like they had to say e-boys and e-girls. I even saw e-kids one time. And I was like, that's actually the creepiest way you could have put it, but it's true. So I'll just be doing the term e-girl, but just go ahead and assume, look, whatever gender you want to throw in, that's fine. It can be e whatever. So, but have you ever had this though, Steve, where you're doing a term and you just kind of stop for a minute and you have just one of those moments where you're like, man, things are different. We're living in a new world. We're living in a brave new world. We're living in a something different from when I was a kid, going back to that Commodore 64 thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had that with this, and I had this moment where I said, boy, I'm really glad that I didn't have the internet as a kid. And
Yes.
then I have 2 kids and I go, gosh, I got to protect them from this internet. So that's the sort of moment I had looking into all this. Not to be too depressing about it.
Well played. And also too, I think we had a moment like this just a week ago when we did mukbang.
Oh goodness. Yeah.
Sorry.
We got to do a fun one. Yeah. We got to get a fun new slang in here, but I wanted to do e-girl because I really didn't know what it meant at all. I just had heard it being used, and I wasn't like sometimes more as a joke, like so-and-so, oh, this is an e-girl, like, oh, am I an e-girl now because of or am I an influencer? I wasn't really sure if it meant influencer. I wasn't sure what it meant.
Okay.
I started hearing it probably about a year or so ago. I mean, you've heard this term, right?
I've heard it, but if you asked me to define it, I probably couldn't. So this is
okay,
good. I feel like I'm going to learn something today, and I've set a very low bar with mukbang. So anything you say, even if you don't like it, it's got to be better than that.
Well, I hope it's good because it was my second. I started to do another one, which I don't think we'll get to, which is fridging, and I was just like, oh, this is so dumb. I'm not going into this. So we're gonna do e-girl, which I think is better because I didn't know what it meant, and now I know, and you don't know what it meant. So you're about to know, or where it comes from and all that. So let's get Urban Dictionary out of the way. Normally, Urban Dictionary I find very helpful. This time it didn't help me that much, but you got to read the Urban Dictionary. There were a ton of, sometimes there'll be like 2 or 3 entries. This one had a lot. And they kind of had let me read them and you can kind of see there's a certain vibe to them, if you will. So here's, I'm going to read 3 of them. The first one is definition of e-girl, a girl that has a sick Instagram feed, good/mediocre taste in music, wears clips in their hair, has a cool room, and probably watches the YouTuber in Ja, which I didn't look up.
Good.
So I'm starting to get a little, okay, I'm seeing this. The next one just says, call her an e-girl because she's always after the D, which I thought was kind of misogynist. And then the last one, art hoe, but TikTok. Which is kind of funny, but still, I think these were written all by incels. And I was trying to remember, did we do an incel? I can't remember if we did that one.
Not yet, but we do reference Urban Dictionary pretty much every week. So I think that we've done our best to share the inside of incels already.
And look, the internet is a scary place. It's a terrifying place if you're a girl, I would imagine. And I would, so that I don't think those are good definitions. So let's move past Urban Dictionary. So the from dictionary.com, the term e-girls and e-boys are slang terms for young men and women, respectively, who are active internet users, often stereotyped as emo-styled anime and gaming fans trying to get attention on social media. So you kind of now getting a picture of who this person is, right? Still pretty broad. I'm looking into this and basically I'm thinking this is everybody on TikTok or Instagram, right? Like, so let's try to narrow it down a little bit. I used 2 articles in my research really, and they were E-Girls and E-Boys Explained by Rebecca Jennings, and that's from Vox. And What is an E-Girl by Sarah Spellings for The Cut. And Rebecca Jennings from The Cut, or was that The Cut? Nope, sorry. Rebecca Jennings from the Vox article defined e-kids this way. She said, hip young people whose defining qualities are that they are hot and online, which again describes a lot of people. But she says, and this is the key difference here.
Okay.
Traditional influencers, right? We all kind of know what influencers are. They traffic in making their real lives seem as aspirational as possible. So we all know those people. We've seen that there's a ton of those like mom blogs. There's a bunch of, hey, look, we're going to show you some life hack or look at how we redid our kitchen. And it's again, aspirational. And influencers are generally that, whereas e-girls and e-boys clout comes from their digital personas. So they're not getting followers from, going on vacation to St. Bart's, or as this says, they're sitting in their bedrooms alone.
Mhm.
So, and she talks too more about how e-girls use the internet sort of as a buffer in some ways to real life.
Mhm.
So they can kind of develop this online personality that you'd never see in real life. So for instance,
Right.
you could see there could be some girl in your high school that you would never, know was also an e-girl because she's doing these TikTok videos and Instagram
Mhm.
videos where she's got colored hair and weird makeup. And so, what does the typical e-girl look like? Well, according to Rebecca Jennings, sorry,
Yes, sir.
it says she will almost never be wearing her natural hair color. Lime green, pink, or half black, half white hair are popular shades, which I did not know that half black, half white are really any of those.
Yeah.
And it says that she will usually be wearing winged eyeliner,
Mhm.
and the clothes are usually thrifted. So there's she says the skate culture, hip hop. Oh, so she goes there's little bits of skate culture, hip hop,
Mhm.
anime, cosplay, BDSM, and goth that will jump out. And I was thinking about goth because I was like, isn't this just goth? And I was looking into that, and basically they said, no, it's not goth because let's put it this way. If you're sitting down at Thanksgiving dinner, you know who the goth kid is.
Right.
But if it's an e-girl, she's going to look like the rest of the family. And then she's going to go into her e-girl persona,
Right.
and get a bunch of clout
Mhm.
or whatever that means, followers,
Right.
maybe even charging for stuff, things like that, online. So the term e-girl is now really just used mostly to either cut someone down,
Mhm.
or it's being used in an ironic way about yourself, kind of. So it's sort of like I was saying before about how a girl might, color her hair a certain way and go, am I an e-girl now? Sort
Right.
of. But when it first started, it was really meant as a total cut down, as like I don't even want to repeat some of this stuff because it's really
Right.
mean. It's really mean. It's really, you'd call some girl doing something online as being an e-girl just meant you were like, I'm not going to read them, but like, so, really a whore for attention, things like
Right.
that. Um, it's kind of used like the word hipster was about 10 years ago. So I'm a great
Yeah.
example of that, where I used to always just get ahead of it and say, yeah, I know I'm a hipster, right?
Right.
Like, because I'm thinking, are people thinking that I look like a hipster? So I would just say I'm a hipster. I don't know. It has sort of a bad connotation,
Right.
but I also don't care. There's part of me that's like, yeah, it's kind of cool that I look like a hipster. You know what I mean? It's the
Yeah.
same. So that's sort of what the e-girl thing is about. So where did this come from? It blew up on TikTok. As I said, that's really where it came from. It had been around before that.
Mhm.
So like things like, oh, what's that website where you put pictures out there? I can't think of what it's called, but
OnlyFans?
no, it's not one where you do pictures of yourself. It's like you post stuff. Not MySpace. I can't remember, but there's it's like a
WikiFeet.
what?
WikiFeet?
No,
Never mind.
keep going though. What you got?
Okay.
Anything else?
Tumblr.
Tumblr is it. Good job.
Okay.
It was either that or WikiFeed. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
So it started, Tumblr, things like that. But once TikTok came out a couple years ago, it just absolutely exploded. And this whole idea of like, hey, I mean, Steve, I don't know you. You don't strike me as the kind of guy that would do stuff like this. But I remember being 14, 15,
Mhm.
listening to music in my bedroom and like rocking out, just sort of in the mirror, kind of like I know is in every like,
Yeah.
90s movie with the hairbrush, and you'd sort of imagine like, what if I was Axl Rose doing this
Yeah.
song? By the way, I saw Blaxl Rose on the road the other day, and I pointed out I said, kids, it's Blaxl Rose. And they're like, what? And then as he drove by, the license plate just said Blaxl.
Yes.
And I
As
said,
it
told you.
should.
I told you
Mhm.
that was
We
Blaxl
need
Rose.
to track him down. He needs to make an appearance sometime.
Yeah, Blaxl Rose is awesome, and I
Mhm.
think we should save it. I'm not even going to say anything more than
Yeah.
that about Blaxl Rose, but anyway. So I mean, gosh, it would be so tempting if I had the opportunity to just video myself pretending to be Axl Rose and then put it out on TikTok. And if I happen to be like an attractive young woman or young girl or whatever, all of a sudden people are following you. So this whole thing is honestly really creepy, especially when they said it brings in things from anime, which we've already said sort of has a creepy vibe for some reason. And then they even say BDSM. And reading through these articles, man, it's really pretty gross. So I feel like I'm taking a lot of time. So let me
I'm enjoying this, but let me ask you something.
Yes,
so
please jump in.
Some of the characteristics of e-girls are they would have different hair than they would have in real life.
Correct.
They would maybe wear different clothes than they would wear normally.
You're ahead of me because I'm going the same place you are. Let me jump right to that. So when I read this description, I did think, and I had in my notes, does this make you an e-boy?
I think it might. But it also helped me with this new slang because I feel, for a while I really didn't like it, but now for some reason I've had a change of heart on it. I'm kind of warming to this, and I need the attention. I mean, being called an art hoe if you're a teenage girl is probably pretty tough, but for someone at my age, in my very, very late 30s, some would say 40s, I think it's, good to get that sort of sexual attention.
I agree. It's not creepy when it's you. And really, I did think about you because it's like, I mean, we've talked about it before. You kind of have, let's just say you're not wearing the bandana to work. So at least your main job.
Yeah.
Something else that might endear you a little bit more to this term is, so going to Sarah Spelling's In the Cut, she points out really a lot of the same stuff as the Vox article. But what I liked about it was she points out how, the term has changed, and she does quote one of your favorites, Doja Cat.
Yes.
So Doja Cat apparently has been described as the TikTok e-girl of your dreams. So if you need to have an idea of what a e-girl is, Doja Cat, which by the way, my streak is alive. I do not know what Doja Cat looks like, and I could not tell you any of her songs. So I feel very like I'm just coming out bragging. I have no idea what she looks like, but she is apparently the e-girl of your dreams. And here's what she said that was really funny. She said, I remember being on Pinterest and I didn't know what an e-girl was. Doja Cat said, I just saw these emo girls, like Tumblr girls, and I saw them looking like they were sick, but it looked intentional, like they were wearing a lot of makeup. So now I do that. So she saw this. So the thing about looking sick is because they put like blush on their nose and cheeks and stuff, so it looks like you got a cold or whatever. So anyway, I thought an e-girl, if I would have had to guess before researching this, was just like I kind of thought of it more like it girl, like a real popular girl that also has a big online following. But really it is a little bit more, in my opinion, weird and creepy. It's somebody that's hot and online and has a bunch of followers and makes themselves look like they're sick and funky looking and then go on and live their normal lives. So I'm just going to say, as a term, well, what do you think, Steve? I'll give you first crack at thumbs up or thumbs down.
Oh, thumbs up. I think it's a great term.
Okay.
I think us art hoes have to stay together with Doja Cat as our leader.
Yeah, exactly. I guess if I have to think about it this long, then it has to just by default get a medium thumb, because I like it in the sense that it does put a name for that thing that we now see all the time. So that's good. I guess it's more so I don't necessarily like that. Like a lot of these terms, I'm like, I don't like that we have to have this term. By the way, I'm sure actually, no, it's not a good thing. I don't think being an e-girl. I can't see the upside to it. Unless you're in your late 30s, some would say 40s, and you are using it for good, as Steve is. And that's today's new slang.
Thank you, Scott. I'm glad. I like how you ended that on a very positive note, because I had finished the depressing portion of the blues, and I didn't want to have to go back and recount.
Well, I felt like I was getting really dark with it because I just kept saying how awful it is. But I mean, whatever. People can do what they want, I guess. But yeah. We got brought up positive with Steve Glissman. the e-boy of your dreams,
Yeah.
as Doja
Oh,
Cat is the e-girl of your dreams.
bitch, I'm a cow. Anyway, to move on, and how do we move on? So we talked about e-girls, e-boys, middle-aged people with potentially high cholesterol or not have that's a very modern thing. So something that's modern, or actually the opposite of modern, is something we used to have called blue laws. So are you familiar with the term blue laws?
I have a guess, but
Okay.
if
Well,
I'm right, I don't want to spoil it. So you go
okay.
ahead. I'm not
Well,
sure.
so I'll tell you what they are. So blue laws are also known as Sunday laws. They
Mhm.
applied to laws that used to be on the books here in the U.S. Essentially, Sunday was the day off. That,
Mhm.
keeping with our country having a lot of Christians in it, Sunday, the Christian Sabbath was respected, and with the idea of you don't work, you don't do certain things on that.
Can
Um,
I regale you with a song real quick?
regale away.
Okay. I think this is what you're talking about. Ain't it a shame to have a drink on a Sunday? Ain't it a shame? Ain't it a shame to have a drink on a Sunday? Ain't it a shame? Ain't it a shame? Shit. Ain't it a shame to have a drink on a Sunday when you got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Ain't it a shame? There's a lot of verses. It goes into fishing and things
Uh-huh.
like that. I could go on, but for the sake of yourself and all the listeners, and especially the viewers,
Mhm.
we can move on.
And I thought you said you didn't know anything about Doja Cat.
Was that a Doja Cat original?
Oh, yeah, I believe it definitely was.
Well, now I feel really embarrassed.
So blue laws were something that persisted in the United States for a while. I actually remember, and being my very, very late 30s, I remember when there was times that you couldn't do things on Sunday, that stores were closed.
Yeah.
My father actually was a manager at a department store, and one of the few perks about that was getting to go in there on a Sunday. He'd have to do work, and my brother and I would get to run around
That's
a
cool.
massive department store all by ourselves. So blue laws were something that I don't think are around as much anymore. I mean, basically, most stores are open. And I think in different areas of the country, there are certain things you can't do. I was discussing with someone, I believe in North Carolina, you still can't buy alcohol until after 12 noon, or they might have just gotten rid of that.
Yeah, I think state by state, I know Utah has some really interesting laws where it's like on Sunday you can they only serve like certain types of alcohol, that the ABV can't be like above
Mhm.
something, and yeah. And the other thing was, I mean, just not too long ago here in Richmond,
Mhm.
Ukrops, the biggest store, the grocery store that's no longer with us,
Yeah.
was closed on Sunday. And
Mhm.
they had that mural that said, "Please go to your house of worship on Sunday," or whatever.
Yeah.
So
And they also didn't sell beer, but
yeah.
coincidentally, every shopping center that Ukrops was at, there was a specialty beer store
Yeah,
right next to it
that
as
all
well.
went out of business after Ukrops
Yeah.
closed and
Yeah.
the others with beer came in. I kind of felt bad for those guys, honestly.
Yeah. They're doing okay.
They'll be fine.
So why are blue laws then called blue laws? So let's find out. So from the Encyclopedia Britannica, blue law. In U.S. history, a law forbidding certain secular activities on Sunday. Now listen to the wording of the next sentence here. The name may derive from Samuel A. Peters' General History of Connecticut from 1781, which reported to list the stiff Stablish regulations in New Haven, Connecticut. The work was printed on blue paper. So this is something that you're going to see a lot when you look up blue laws, that it came from this book from Samuel Peters, and is also on blue paper. And as you know, when you see something a whole lot, it
Yeah.
generally seems to mean that it's false.
Well,
So
just like our wonderful media today.
yeah,
It
things have changed so much.
the faker and wronger it is.
Mhm.
Did I just say fake news? Yes, I guess I did.
Yeah,
The wronger it is, the more it spreads, and the more,
yeah.
because the truth ain't as fun. But are you telling me that blue paper was not involved with blue laws? Is that where you're going?
Blue paper was not involved. And
Okay.
I'll get to why blue is associated with it. So the blue paper aspect of it is folk etymology. You're going to see a lot of places, and that's not true. But where the laws came from in the name, there is a bit of truth with that book, Samuel Peters' General History of Connecticut, but not in the way you might think. So who was Samuel Peters? And this, I'm going to go to ctexplored.org, CT as in Connecticut, discussing the life of Samuel Peters. Born in Hebron, Connecticut in 1735, Peters became an Episcopal minister and Loyalist sympathizer, meaning that he was loyal to England.
Dirty England.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like England, but
not when
like
King George was in charge.
Yeah.
Chased out of Connecticut by the Sons of Liberty in 1774 for his zealous efforts to thwart support for the Revolutionary War, he escaped to England. In retaliation, in 1781, Peters spitefully published the General History of Connecticut from Fenwick to Revolution, in which he created 46 outlandish axioms, passing them off as Connecticut's law of the land.
That is awesome. That is one of the best, most spiteful, hilarious things I've ever heard. That's amazing. So he's a loyalist. He gets driven out. He goes back and he writes this book, basically like saying this is like Connecticut law. That's so
exactly
funny. Just to make them look like asses. It's so funny.
Well, as the article notes, I'll quote them: comically misrepresented Connecticut colonists as dunderheads, indeed of ultra repressive legislation.
Remember when I said I didn't like this guy?
Mm-hmm.
I love this guy.
Yeah,
that is amazing.
I love America, but I love being spiteful almost as much.
Yeah.
So, and I think another thing that's really good, I'm going to read some of these axioms to you, is a good lie has a bit of truth to it, I think. So let's read the first couple ones. Number 1, the governor and magistrates convened in General Assembly are the supreme power under God of this independent dominion.
Okay.
Which is kind of strident, but in, the 1700s, you could see, the law of the land, we're the supreme power, but under God. So kind of
it sounds a little draconian the way he's writing it, but
yeah. So the second one, whoever says there is power and jurisdiction above and over this dominion shall suffer death and loss of property. So that sounds like a bit much.
That's a bit much. That doesn't sound like he may have done us a favor keeping people away, because I wouldn't want to go live in that.
Yeah. So it gets, he starts out with something that seems a little bit reasonable, and then it kind of proceeds. No Quaker or dissenter from the established worship of this dominion shall be allowed to give a vote for the election of magistrates or any officer.
Especially women. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, they don't like Quakers, who, in defense of what he wrote there, are pacifists, which makes me not like them. But I do like their oatmeal. Yep. So Quakers, again, being, kind of seen as different people, everyone, which is very un-American, everyone gets to vote. You don't have to have a religious, the approval.
So he said dissenters or people that don't follow the laws and Quakers. That's okay.
Pretty much.
That's pretty funny. So, I was confused, because I thought I was sitting there going, oh, is that it's even confusing me. I'm like, is that what the Quakers were? They were people that didn't, I got all caught up in it.
So continuing with the Quaker theme, no food or lodging shall be afforded to a Quaker, Adamite, or other heretic. Adamite. So I was thinking something anti-Semitic when
That's what I thought too. I was like Gentile somehow, but that doesn't even make sense.
But I looked it up, and Adamite was basically a nudist.
Oh, that's amazing.
So
no Quakers, no nudists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I like that he's inferring there that there's enough nudists that they needed to put it into the law.
It's like, it's almost like the hobo laws, where it was like, you may not molest the children.
Yeah.
So, whoa. Okay.
Yeah. You're bringing that up a whole lot. Yeah. No one had that on their list, but you guys keep bringing that up.
No Quakers, Adamites, or Eskimos. What was the third one? Yeah.
Yeah. Probably Eskimos too, if they knew what they were. So continuing. So it starts from, I think, realm of reason, even though you might not agree with it, but then it just gets absurd. Number 9, no woman shall kiss her child on the Sabbath or fasting day.
Okay, that's bizarre. That's bizarre.
Married persons must live together or be imprisoned.
Yeah.
Not good. And my favorite, every male shall have his hair cut round according to a cap.
That's hilarious. Because that's just a personal, he's just roasting them at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I actually found more detail from ConnecticutHistory.org on number, I don't know if actually it's number 14, but every male shall have his hair cut round according to a cap. The further assertion was when caps were not to be found, they were to substitute the hard shell of a pumpkin, which being put on the head every Saturday, the hair is cut.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. He's doing a good job of, if I was reading this, even today, if you were to say these were the laws of Connecticut, whatever, I'd be reading through and I'd be like, oh, well, dang, I didn't know it was that hardcore. And then I'd get to the pumpkin part and I'd go, what the hell? But I'd be like, I would still kind of be buying it, right? Because I'm like, well, I guess they didn't have what is it that you did a free ad for? The Conair? They didn't have that.
Yeah, they didn't have Conair clippers from Amazon. And if they did, it was probably the Quakers using it, and they didn't want anything to do with that.
Right.
So as it continues there, and what I just noticed too is he found a way basically to call them pumpkin heads.
Yeah.
By that. So Samuel Peters doing a good job. So the term blue law, I think it might be popularized by this this story, which I'm sure was out there and got around the country. But blue, as we talked about, is a word that means lots of things. And it can also mean to be frigid. It can also mean to be kind of arrogant and I don't know if snobbish is the term, but above your looking down on people.
Like a blue blood kind of situation.
Exactly. Blue bloods or blue noses, which could be people that are frigid sort of people.
Sounds like an e-girl.
It could be. That could be actually my next thing. I need to work on the whole goth color thing. So maybe what I'll do is start doing something with some blue makeup with that. So blue laws, where did they go? So I looked up an article in the Daily Press from here in Virginia because I wondered when they finally went away. Because again, I remember being a child and spending time in stores. And I think when they went away, initially some people kind of, held up and kept things going, kept Sundays off, but most companies caved. So according to the Daily Press, blue laws were struck down by the Virginia Supreme Court in September 1988. What was interesting too was it was part of a lawsuit brought by some department stores that are funny to see if you remember any of these names. Heckingers or Hex, Kmart, Zayres, Best Products, Circuit City, and Roses.
Every single one of them's out of business, I believe. I
think Roses is still around.
Is Roses still a thing? I remember Roses, yeah.
They're random. Like you'll see one every now and then. It's like seeing a leprechaun sitting on the street corner. It's something you don't get to see too.
Well, so basically, it sounds like these are all people that kind of saw the writing on the wall, maybe not, and like, we need an extra day to sell stuff. I mean, it's obviously not that simple, but that's funny. Yeah.
So that's where blue laws comes from.
Wow. Okay. That wasn't, by the way, just so that everyone knows I'm not smart. Remember, I was like, I think I kind of know it wasn't that. So I thought it was tied to more like blue comedy or blue language or something.
Well, since you bring that up, you'll enjoy this next segment.
Beautiful. So
for our last segment here, we're going to talk about blue in terms of something being dirty or obscene. Blue comedy.
I'm so glad you're doing this. Yes.
Thank you. So to start out, as I mentioned, blue has a lot of different ways it can be used. And going to Merriam-Webster, the seventh definition is profane, indecent. The example they give is a blue movie. And another example they give is off-color, risque, blue jokes. So blue movies, I thought about doing, but there's nothing more fun than talking about pornography, especially after I've established I'm an art hoe. So we'll just let that go and focus on off-color humor, blue jokes. So going to our good friends at Worldwide Words, a question from a reader there. I wonder if you could tell me the origin of blue in the sense of pornographic. And our resource here begins by saying, I wish I could. And I'm going to read heavily here from Worldwide Words. What we do know is that the word began to be applied to matters obscene in the 1820s. There's an entry for it in the Scottish Clavodian Encyclopedia by John McTaggart. Thread o' blue, any little smutty touch in song singing, chatting, or a piece of writing. So the Scottish are back. And there, we have Sir Walter Scott. We have this now. So reading... continue to read from Worldwide Words. So long as it predates, for example, any reference to the musical genre called the blues, which seems to be a late 19th century joke based on the pornography, but then well established. So they continue with one theory that stands out that I saw a couple other places, and again, wasn't really able to nail it down. A theory that it derives from a series of French books entitled Bibliothèque Bleue, which John Farmer, in the first volume of his Slang and its Analogues of 1891, attribute to an earlier slang compiler, John Camden Houghton. Farmer described them as being a very questionable character. But La Bibliothèque Bleue was actually a tradition of inexpensive publications originally bound in blue paper covers, much like penny dreadfuls. So I like the idea there's a dirty French book called Bibliothèque Bleue that I think I've pronounced differently every time I said it.
I got it the first time. I got you.
Yeah, but there's also too, you see the blue paper coming back in again. And we talked about earlier with penny dreadfuls that they were, pulp came from that, with it just being a low quality. And I could see, French smutty stuff being written on blue paper. So I don't think that's true, but I could see it coming from French, with the French association there, something being dirty. So when it comes to comedy, why is it used? I'm going to actually rely on good old Wikipedia, mostly because it reinforces things I seem to know anyway. So blue comedy, or working blue, is comedy that is off-color, risque, indecent, or profane, largely about sex. It often contains profanity or sexual imagery that may shock or offend some audience members. So the term blue, I always knew this term from when it was phrased as working blue. And I knew this just from being the weird little kid that I was, that comedians would often have kind of two sets of acts that they would do. You would have an act that would maybe be for television, and you would, something that would need to be very PG or G rated, and could not be obscene. But also they would have maybe like another act that would be for the nightclub or for like the late show. And lots of comedians had this. I think a good example, and actually Wikipedia references this, is Bob Saget. Bob Saget's the very funny dad on the Full House series. But everyone now, I think it was shocking when it happened. But, when he works as a comedian, he's not very family friendly, I guess we would say.
Yeah, he's like one of the dirtier ones out there. That was shocking back in the day to find that out.
And speaking of dirty and shocking, an example they give is Bill Cosby's 1969 record, 8:15-12:15, which one side was his family-friendly show, and then his at the 8:15, then 12:15 was his Blue Midnight show, which we know seemed to carry on after the performance.
Yes. Then 2:15 was when he put something in the blue drink, and and we'll just let that one. He deserves it. You have to say something. You got to make fun of Cosby.
Got to make fun of the cause. So other comedians were known to do this, but maybe in a backwards way. We talked about Bob Saget, who's kind of known as being family friendly, and had blue material, but a lot of black comedians of the era being kind of like pre-1980s, were the opposite. That they were known for their blue humor, but would clean it up for TV. So some prominent figures include Red Fox.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
LaWanda Page, and also a team that appeared often on Sanford and Son, the show that I think a lot of people know Red Fox from, Leroy and Skillet.
Yes. Leroy and Skillet. Yes. I remember, and you talked about them. Am I wrong in thinking that Leroy and Skillet also were in your episode about, who's the Black Dynamite guy?
It's Dolomite is what you mean, Mr. Rudy Ray Moore. And Leroy and Skillet were prominently featured in Petey Wheatstraw, the Devil's Son-in-Law.
Okay.
Which if you need me to talk for about 30 minutes, I can. Also, I realized Leroy and Skillet were also in The Disco Godfather. But at least Skillet was. But what was interesting, and I've watched way too many Rudy Ray Moore movies, everyone seemed to lose weight in that movie. So everyone was much thinner, and Skillet's barely recognizable in that because he's lost so much weight. And so is Rudy Ray Moore. To see everyone how much weight they lost in between movies, I have a feeling there was a fad diet in there somewhere that probably wasn't very healthy.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what I wanted to look up what episode that is, because I can say this because it's not my episode. It was a Steve episode. That's one of my favorite episodes. And then the reason I love it so much is the one where we talk about, I don't even remember what the terms are. I just remember you can jump in and you know, we've done so many episodes, but it's one of my favorite episodes where you talk about Rudy Ray Moore, because you really could tell that you could go another hour and you're really enjoying, you know, telling the story of Petey Wheatstraw. And we did, I believe, also talk about the sequel to that, which you just alluded to,
the Disco Godfather.
The Disco Godfather. It's one of my favorite episodes. So you should,
thank you.
Anybody wants to know more about that, they should go to episode whatever it is. Just go to our feed and do you remember what the terms were?
It was Diamond in the Rough.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. And it is. I will agree with you that it is one of my favorite episodes too. So for a serious reason why it's called Blue Comedy, I'm going to go to an article from underthemoonlight.com. And I'm not sure if I believe this, but I think I've kind of seen this other places, and it seems to make sense that there was a time in Britain where if you're going to perform on stage, there was a stage licensing act that, you know, censorship was a little bit more prominent back then, that you couldn't do certain things. And there was an examiner of plays who would review the text of what was going to be performed, and they would use a blue pen to mark it out. So the Theatre Censorship Board, I know in England, was actually, according to this article, active until 1968. So I think that could be true.
Yeah, I can see that.
That it came from that. And there's also another story about a gentleman by the name of Max Miller, who was an English stand-up, and he also performed as Cheeky Chappie, which sounds like if I was another type of e-boy, maybe that would be something that I would use. And he would use props. He would have one white book of jokes and one blue book of jokes, and, you know, ask which book he should read from and do his jokes from. Okay. And the audience, of course, with the, you know, knowing that blue meant risque, would request that. And I think also too, to kind of play on this, there's the blue, you know, the blue ink that crossed things out. I think it's almost like a twist on blue laws. It's kind of like a ironic use of it, of like blue laws, blue things you couldn't do on Sundays. And this is kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I think.
That makes total sense. Yeah. I like how it all comes together.
Yeah.
I also like how the blues started with the DTs and alcoholics, and it ends with drunk people yelling at comedy shows that they want the blue comedy. It all comes back to alcohol.
And Leroy and Skillet. So I think that's a good way to end the episode. So again, explored some blue terms, learned the origin of why blues are associated with depression, learned the true story of blue laws here in the United States, and why also maybe we know the origin of why blue comedy is called blue comedy.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. That was fantastic. Well, thank you for listening to Origin of Speakcies or watching it. If you like the show, please consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/Speakcies. And this is very important. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We need some good ones to balance out this 1-star review by Schlinky1. Subject, really? He goes on, what time is the Klan going to meet at Mike Boudin's house? Loved it till we went down those liberals are ruining the country and communism is coming with the social agenda. I challenge you to look at the definition of communism and socialism so you know the difference. There are no violinists playing a sad song at the amount of time, how hard you work so you can sit back and make millions off others. I guarantee Adam Carolla does not work harder than me in my minimum wage job. How insulting. I make 12 an hour and giving Mike $20 a month so he can spout his opinion, living a lifestyle I could never imagine. By the way, I'm leaving out a lot of all caps and exclamation points. Enjoy and goodbye. You could have been a bit more gracious. BTW, it is a pandemic, not a liberal conspiracy. So sorry you can't travel and eat exotic food. What gaslighting event? Nonsense. Their moms are dying of COVID. You guys are scary stupid. So stay safe and don't get murdered. Canceling my membership. So if you want to help us out and balance out those, we would love a 5-star review. So for Scary Stupid Steve, Bob's your uncle.
Watch out for bears, and kale is from the devil.
Speakcies.